This is why not every content creator should speak out / give their opinion on stuff like this. I'm not a geographer or geologist, like what the fuck is this? If you really care, then use the platform to spread educated people's voices on it, not whatever this is. So then others defended him against the backlash, saying, I think it's fair to say that what he is expressing here is a normal, fair, and relatable reaction. It is easy to dunk on him for the geologist comment or to ask about the hostages, but the reality is Theo is like most people who just see suffering. Kids buried in rubble, parents weeping over dead bodies, neighborhoods destroyed, and want it to stop. His feelings and empathy seem entirely genuine. It's saying this is a deeply human and good thing, and we shouldn't demean him or anyone else for having them. But that's also not where the controversy ended, because you also had a number of people frustrated that he said this even though he associates himself with Trump, or with him among other things, having just been in Miami with Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, and he made an appearance during Trump's visit to Qatar doing a stand-up set before the president delivered remarks. And so with this, you have some saying he's not just kind of MAGA adjacent, he's fully part of Team Trump. And all of this is Trump really hasn't been seen as Gaza friendly, and even shared a video reimagining the Gaza Strip as like a giant Mar-a-Lago. Right? So you had some saying that Theo is being a hypocrite here for condemning the US government's actions one minute, but then playing buddy-buddy with Trump and his family the next. Writing things like, Theo, you voted for and attended an inauguration for a man who joked about building hotels over the top of the wreckage. You supported the man who funded it with a smile. And with that, arguing that no one should fall for what they called his crocodile tears, and that his sympathy for Gaza in that clip, it's just performative. But again, depending on where you go on the internet, drastically different reactions. And so while all of this is playing out, I then got to pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts around this? And I'll leave that as kind of a more open question, because there are some black and white takes that I've seen and some kind of more nuanced ones. But then from that, next up, in very interesting news, if you are an OnlyFans user in Sweden, you might go to prison. Right, in that, because the Swedish parliament just passed a law equating the purchase of sexual content online with purchasing sex from a prostitute, which one is already illegal in Sweden, and two comes with a punishment of up to a year in prison for the buyer. And specifically, under this new law, which is set to take effect July 1st, it will be illegal to pay someone to carry out a sexual act remotely for the specific purpose of that act being viewed by the buyer. Or in other words, this is not a complete ban on internet porn, but it is meant to target specifically live commissioned interaction. Right, so watching pre-recorded content, that is still legal, and you can even watch lives as long as you are not paying for a specific act. You know, this type of content that they've made illegal, it spells some serious trouble for sites like OnlyFans, because those live, special commissioned interactions, they're both incredibly popular and incredibly lucrative for the performers. And then as far as why the Swedish government has done this, right, do they have an issue with OnlyFans? Well, there I'll say it's not that simple, because during parliamentary debate, lawmakers argued that this law, it's meant to address the dangerous aspects of online sex work, with one MP saying, this is about digitalized prostitution, where the boundaries between pornography and human trafficking are blurred, but where exploitation and abuse are present. With another MP saying after the bill passed, this is a new form of sex purchase, and it's high time we modernize the legislation to include digital platforms. And as you'd expect, we're seeing a lot of people both celebrating and heavily criticizing the move. With advocates saying that the new law makes a standard on sex work in Sweden uniform and clear, what's illegal in person is now illegal digitally, saying the digital world can no longer be an entry point for prostitution. Then, as far as the criticism, that's actually coming from a couple of different places. You have some saying this is just born of moral panic, let adults be adults, but then others saying this actually doesn't go far enough, and they've called for the ban of platforms like OnlyFans altogether. And then also there are just some that are concerned that this law could end up arbitrary as performers and fans find loopholes. But again, this doesn't go into effect until July 1st, but it will be interesting to see if we see charges start to come from this. But then, next up today, let's talk about abortion, or rather, more specifically, let's talk about this recent wave of advertising and messaging that we've seen from reproductive healthcare nonprofits, starting with Planned Parenthood. In that, because the group just got backing from dozens of big stars for a campaign that started just today with a full-page ad in the New York Times, with it dubbed the I'm for Planned Parenthood initiative, and per Rolling Stone, it comes in response to the Trump administration's attacks on Planned Parenthood. Because back in April, they announced plans to freeze family planning funds for the group, which is a move that'll cut access to birth control, cancer screenings, and more. And so this new campaign, it highlights the threats that reproductive health care is currently facing, with it also stating that 1 in 4 people in the US have been to a Planned Parenthood health center for care, birth control, cancer screenings, wellness exams, STI testing and treatment, abortion, gender-affirming care, and more. And you had big names signing on to it, including Pedro Pascal, Olivia Rodrigo, Addison Rae, Harry Styles, Megan Thee Stallion, and way more. And you had Planned Parenthood thanking those stars on Instagram and writing that healthcare decisions should be made by patients, not politicians. Right? And this is Planned Parenthood is not the only group that's been trying to raise awareness lately. With, for example, Axios reporting that a group called the Bridget Alliance is rolling out campaigns in Florida, Louisiana, and Georgia. Right? And their specific focus is helping people who need to travel out of state for abortion care, helping to cover transportation, lodging, coordination, childcare, and more. And in Florida, you had the group targeting people on Facebook, Instagram, and more with digital and audio ads about their services. And in Georgia, the group will run 2 static billboards around the Atlanta area for a month, with them then also posting billboard trucks in front of universities and crisis pregnancy centers. And this notably comes as there's a ton of focus on abortion laws in Georgia right now because of the case of Adriana Smith, which, if you haven't heard, it is just a nightmare story. She's a 30-year-old nurse in Atlanta, and according to her family, she was about 9 weeks pregnant when she was declared brain dead in February. With her story then getting a lot of attention over the last week after her family told local news that Adriana has been on life support for more than 90 days since she was declared brain dead and is now 21 weeks pregnant, with the hospital telling her family that they are keeping her alive until the baby can be delivered due to the state's abortion ban. And so, as you might imagine, this has sparked a ton of outrage and debate on how strict abortion laws should be interpreted in cases like this, especially because this most likely is going to end in an all-around tragedy. Because you have medical experts telling the Washington Post that they know of no cases where a mother who was declared brain dead this early in pregnancy but kept on life support was able to have a healthy and successful delivery. And you have Adriana's family saying that, they don't know what's going to happen and they don't know what choice they would have made if they had been given any options. But what's frustrating is that they had no say at all. And so then with all that, you had a Democratic state senator writing, "This is a grotesque distortion of medical ethics and human decency. That any law in Georgia could be interpreted to require a brain-dead woman's body to be artificially maintained as a fetal incubator is not only medically unsound, it is inhumane." And this is the state's Attorney General Chris Carr has denied that Georgia's abortion law mandates this with his office writing. There is nothing in the Life Act that requires medical professionals to keep a woman on life support after brain death. Removing life support is not an action, quote, with the purpose to terminate a pregnancy. But still, you have the hospital, Emory Healthcare, maintaining it, quote, uses consensus from clinical experts, medical literature, and legal guidance to support our providers as they make individualized treatment recommendations in compliance with Georgia's abortion laws and all other applicable laws. And notably there, some legal experts have said they understand how they landed there. With, for example, a professor at Drexel University telling the AP that the hospital is likely concerned about the part of the law that gives fetuses legal rights as members of the species Homo sapiens. Right? Meaning that the hospital likely feels that it has to consider Adriana and the fetus as 2 separate patients, meaning that there is an obligation to keep the fetus alive even if she's dead. Within that professor adding, these are the kinds of cases that law professors have been talking about for a long time when they talk about fetal personhood. Even though you had Carr slamming this interpretation of the law, you also had Republican State Senator Ed Setzler supporting it, saying, I think it is completely appropriate that the hospital do what they can to save the life of the child. I think this is an unusual circumstance, but I think it highlights the value of innocent human life. I think the hospital is acting appropriately. And as the attention around the story has grown and the public outrage has grown with it, her family also started a GoFundMe for medical costs that has raised nearly $100,000. And there you had people writing things like, it is a misuse of power, a violation of dignity, and a painful delay of sacred closure. Your daughter's soul deserves peace. As well as, you should have been given a choice. We should all be rioting outside of that hospital and demanding this broken law be rectified. But ultimately, that is where we are right now. And unfortunately, this ends up being another one in the column of just nightmarish post-Roe stories that we're seeing play out. And then I've got way more news you need to know about in just a minute. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Because y'all, gut health chatter, it's everywhere. Millions of posts, endless videos, head-spinning amounts. But amidst the confusion, there's one company standing strong for scientific integrity and transparency, and that's today's sponsor, Seed. And specifically, I'm talking about Seed's DSO1 Daily Synbiotic, aka the product that rescued my digestive system from what I can only describe as internal chaos. Seed's like reading the terms and conditions while everyone else is blindly clicking agree. And as far as what makes DSO1 different is it's a synbiotic, not just a probiotic. It combines prebiotics and probiotics to support a healthy gut and overall health. And yeah, they brought the receipts with actual peer-reviewed research. While I'm not a doctor, I do care about what I put into my body, and DSO1 has been a part of my daily routine for years now. It took my gut from constant crisis mode to functional adult status. And so if you're ready to cut through the noise and truly nurture your gut health, give DSO1 a shot. Especially because Seed's offering you beautiful bastards 25% off your first month. You'll receive this 30-day supply, refillable glass jar, and travel bag. And after that, they send sustainably packaged refills. So just click that link in the description or scan the code and use code DeFranco25 at checkout to get 25% off your first order of Seed's DSO1 Daily Synbiotic plus free shipping. Your future self's digestive system will literally thank you. Not literally. That would be weird and concerning, but you know what I mean. But then, going back to the news, Trump's big, beautiful tax bill, it could go up for a vote as soon as tonight, and you've got the president himself claiming that the GOP is tremendously unified. But this notably as key members of the party have said the exact opposite. So the top level TLDR is that this measure, which was drafted by House Republicans, it would set key parts of Trump's legislative agenda, with the bulk of the initial legislation being composed of more than $4 trillion in tax cuts, which include the extension of the 2017 cuts made under the first Trump administration. But also, in order to pay for that, the GOP has proposed a series of cost-cutting measures. With that, including among other things, massive cuts to food stamps and Medicaid that will force millions of poor Americans to lose their health insurance and other key benefits. But even then, a preliminary analysis by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimated that this proposal would add roughly $2.3 trillion to the debt over the next decade, which, sirens going off, is a figure that many economists and Wall